Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle Bookshop yet again this morning. It's a beautiful temperate day. It rained all night, but the rain was over by the morning. The morning was the early morning, the very early morning was a little dodgy with clouds and overcast, so you weren't quite sure that the rain was quite finished, and the rain is coming back tomorrow. But by mid-morning, it was clear that it was going to be a lovely short sleeves kind of day. So I had a meeting to go to. Believe it or not, an in-person meeting. What an absurd anachronism. But I did it anyway, and when it was done, it was mid-morning, and I was faced with the choice. Do you come back and get to work like a responsible citizen, or do you go to the Brattle, despite the fact that you were just there a couple of days ago? And I went to the Brattle, and I found a pile of stuff. The pile of books that I found was largely subsidized by another store credit. Someone else called in a very generous store credit. I always say that you are perfectly free to do that for me, but if all of you keep doing it, I'm going to feel a little bit self-conscious. Well, I would have gone anyway, but in this case, my visit was free. The books were free, thanks to a wonderful, generous store credit donor. I won't name this generous person. I will merely give you the random clue that he is currently reading through Dante's Divine Comedy on BookTube. That doesn't narrow the field. And because of that gift, I was able to go. I would have gone anyway, but I was able to go and just shop to my heart's content. And it was a lot of fun. It was a good time. I always forget that the thing I lose I often go to the Brattle very early, first thing, right as they've opened. And that's not choice on my part. That's just propinquity. It just happens to be that is the time when it's convenient. This time I was there hours later, and I always forget that when I go hours later, there's a good chance that I will run into old cronies, and I did. I ran into in the sale lot. I ran into 2 old cronies, people that I've been going shopping at the Brattle with, chatting at the Brattle with, for a long time, longer than some of the staff at the Brattle have been alive. We've been just showing up there at the same time. That was always fun to joke. We were a little bit rough in our joking, but that's understandable. And also, I got to see the Brattle's infamous truck coming back from a buy. The Brattle's out all the time, filling the back of the van with boxes of books. They go out on book buys all the time. They come here from time to time. And they had just come back from a massive book buy. Very, very tempting. Because, of course, I'm a chatty Cathy. So when the kids were... kids, I shouldn't call them kids. When the young guys were pulled the van in and were unloading it, I was standing right there just gabbing with them and poking around the boxes even though I was in their way. I swear. Why they don't ban me from the Brattle, I don't know. And when I was poking around the boxes, I saw all kinds of things that I wanted. And that cannot happen. I can't. Those books aren't for shopping yet. They have to be processed and priced and moved all around long before anybody gets their hands on them. Which, once I realized that and made my peace with it, that was fine. It was also fun. It was also very interesting to see. And I did a lot of shopping. Now, I found a few things, just like last time, I found a few things that I can't show you because they're presents that are going to go in the mail and get mailed off to people. But to people who may be watching is what I mean. I don't want to spoil the surprise. But I still found a bunch of things. And you're going to notice that the things have something in common. They're either very, very fat books or they're very, very thin books. I found nothing in between this time around. Like this first one, it's in pretty rough shape. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it up. But I couldn't remember when I saw it if I had given away my last copy. And I looked around a little before I turned on the camera, and I can't find my copy. So it might be that I did give it away. This is Arthur Schlesinger, and this is his big book, Robert Kennedy and His Times. And it's got a little bit of dirt on the spine, a little bit of sun fading, and a little bit of damage on the back that I will be able to fix. It's just the dust jacket. The book itself is in perfect condition, or just a workhorse of a thing. And this is, Arthur Schlesinger also did a book on JFK. I think that his book on RFK is even more impressive. I think it's the best thing he ever did. And also manages to be, oddly enough, a better book on a JFK than it is on RFK, which is just little brother syndrome right down the line. I think that it is. Certainly, when you're writing a book about Robert Kennedy, then you're not quite so in the spotlight reverential towards John Kennedy. And once you do that, once you remove that reverential spotlight from John Kennedy, he gets to shine. He wasn't a reverential person. He gets to shine. He has the best lines in this book. He has the best humorous insights. And also, I am firmly convinced that if you read this book, I don't know if you will, but if you read this book, the JFK parts you will like more than the RFK parts. I think that's probably true. And if I do have my original copy of this, if I didn't give it away, then this is a double. So, preemptively let me know that in the comments field. If you want me to mail you this and you live in the United States, I am not going to mail a 60-pound hardcover overseas. But if you live in the United States and there's no way you're ever going to come across this, and maybe you don't mind a book that I have renovated, and you're interested, then let me know, because it could be a double. I mean, I'll let you know in email if it's not. If it's not a double, then no, but or maybe yes anyway. But the next big fat book that I got is something I've had many times. I've hauled it on this channel, but I keep getting rid of it to Christians who are viewers of mine, and who've noticed over the years that although I can be very harsh about the fact claims of organized religion, I do not like organized religion making fact claims about the tenets of its faith. That drives me crazy. If you tell me that you believe in God, I'm going to have a million questions. I'm going to be very curious. None of the questions will be irreverent at all. They will be fascinated and deeply respectful. If you tell me you believe in God, I will have a million questions for you. If you tell me your God is real, I will react in a very different way. Your God is manifestly not real. Now, that doesn't mean that your God doesn't exist, but it does mean that should not under any circumstances be expected to leave out room for that possibility. If something exists, you can show it. That doesn't have anything to do with your faith. But there have been Christians over the years who've been watching me digress, just like I just did, on the matter of faith and belief and whatnot, who've realized that, that I'm not an enemy, and that I've done a lot of reading, and in almost all cases, far more reading than they have on their own faith. And every time I mention this author and his books, I get a request. Could you find them for me? Could you find something and send it to me? And the author is Raymond Brown, who was quite the fleshy temptation when he was in his 20s. And this is The Birth of the Messiah. Up on the shelf, I have his 2-volume, The Death of the Messiah. This is his 1-volume book on the birth of the Messiah, where he goes through the Gospels and analyzes, what they say about the Nativity, how they interrelate, maybe a little bit about the theological textual history after that and whatnot. He's good to read. He's really interesting to read. And this is a terrific book. The 2 books of his to get are the Birth of the Messiah and The Death of the Messiah. And I didn't have this because the last copy of this that I had was a fat trade paperback, and one of you asked for it. So I sent it away. So I sent it away. I'd rather not send this one away since it's a hardcover with one of these plastic library covers. But if you don't have this author and you want this author, let me know, because I might not want to give up this copy, but there's no hurry. Right? And the Brattle Bookshop sees this author all the time. So I feel certain that I could make a note on my phone and find a copy for you. And then the last of the big fat books, it's smaller than those other 2, but it's still fairly hefty, is kind of a BookTube thing. I read these and reviewed them from the publisher. But then years later, when I was watching BookTube, David Murphy likes these books a lot more than I did. And that is cause enough for me to go back and revisit them. So I did, and I liked them a lot more the second time. So maybe there's something to be said for this. This is the historian James Holland, and this is book 2 in his history of the war in the West. This is The Allies Strike Back, 1941 to 1943. The first book is The Rise of Germany, and that's in red. This is in blue, and it also has a library dust jacket on it, so it needs a little bit of cleaning up down here. That won't be hard. These dust jackets make it easy. So I grabbed it, because these things were all free, thanks to the generosity of an anonymous donor, an anonymous Dante Scholar donor. Then we have the thin books. Starting with a double. It's in very rough shape. I will resuscitate it. I wanted the double because sometimes you never know You know, sometimes you want two copies of a book that you really love. This is in such horrible shape that I knew when I saw it that I wouldn't see it again, that it would be pruned and thrown away by the Brattle staff as just too worn and torn to be in the sale lot anymore. And we've seen this already before. This is the New Yorker cartoonist Helen Hokinson. And this is her volume, When Were You Built? This is a collection of her New Yorker cartoons starring her oblivious ladies that are all so wonderful. They're also wonderfully clueless. Uh, uh, Here's one of them in her frock and her big hat. She's looking at cameras. Those of you who are born in the 21st century will not know it, but those are cameras that she's looking at. She's at a camera shop. And the caption is, "Haven't you got something I could just squeeze or push?" And that was Helen Hokinson's genius, is that she would have her ladies say things. You immediately know what the ladies are asking, and yet you also know that wonderfully the ladies have no idea of all the double entendres that could be made out of what they're saying. They are innocent. Helen Hokin's best girls are innocent. And that is just a perfect example. Here's this other one, a lady in a bookstore with a feather in her hat, of course. She's looking at the books and she's asking, "This won't change my thinking, will it?" Well, let me get you another one here since I can't resist. Here is one of Helen Hokinson's best girls coming out of the massage parlor and talking to the receptionist, and she's saying, "I really expected to look a little different for $28." Let's see here. I promise I won't just go through them all. I promise. Here's another one. She's at her library and she's outraged. And she says, "I'll tell you one thing. Henry James wasn't worth a 47-cent fine." I wonder if I can find one from the war. That would be great. Here's another lady at the bookshop. "I don't mind the American Revolution as long as it doesn't have too much sex in it." There are a few that are from the war that are absolutely hilarious. They're absolutely classic. There's a lady at a shop. They're always at shops, and she's telling the shopkeep, "We want to send a hostess present to a dachshund." The one that I'm looking for, when you're looking for a particular cartoon, you never find it. But the one that I'm looking for is about a ladies group. No, well, okay. It's When Were You Built, and they put the one I'm looking for right at the front there because it's so famous, where a woman is standing there in front of her ladies club, and the caption is not going to please David Murphy, but even so, "I just want to say that I'm perfectly willing to serve as treasurer, provided every penny doesn't have to come out exactly even." And the title refers to these two clueless ladies who are walking around a historic environment. Right, so you've got all sorts of historic houses and plaques and whatnot, and they walk up to a woman in her garden who's living in one of those houses, and they ask her, "When were you built?" Classic Helen Hokinson clueless caption. And this is in very, very rough shape, but that's why I got it. I got it because I wasn't thinking that it would be back there when I went again. And I also indulged in another New Yorker cartoon collection. This is Peter Arno. And it's just this thing. It's Peter Arno's Parade. This big thing here this has to be 100 years old. Let's find out when this came out. This was especially made and printed for the authors and other friends of Horace Liverwright. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, so when this says Horace Liverwright is now an imprint, without the Horace. Liverwright is now an imprint of W.W. Norton. But when this was done, Horace Liverwright was alive and having his tea-many martinis every night. This came out in 1929, or 1926, so 100 years ago. And this is all Peter Arno, with one kind of inking style or another, but this is all him. And the reason why I like artist-specific one-volume collections like this or When Were You Built is because often they will have things in them that the artist really liked but that weren't in the New Yorker. I'm familiar with both these artists from the New Yorker. And these are collections of their work. So if Peter Arno sold the odd cartoon now and again to Ladies' Home Journal or the Saturday Evening Post or whatnot, those won't be in a New Yorker collection any more than Helen Hogan's will be, but they'll be in here. So they're a lot of fun to go hunting through. And then the last two books that I got, this totally sponsored trip. I hesitate to say that you're always welcome to send me Brattle gift credit at the store. You just have to call and say, I want to give Steve store credit. You won't have to identify me. The store knows me pretty well. I hesitate to say that, though, if you're all going to keep doing it. But it is very nice. And one thing you know for sure is that you will get a Brattle haul out of your donation. If you dangle store credit in front of me, I will go and spend it. Believe you me, I will not run out of things to find and talk about. And there's the side benefit in that I'm perfectly happy to mail out a lot of these things. I'm not, the goal in any Brattle trip is to get a keeper, to get things you won't get rid of. But there are keepers and there are keepers. So these last two are examples of the Brattle will provide. I always say that on this channel. When I encounter some lack, something that I don't have, I always say the Brattle will provide, because sooner or later I will see that very thing at the Brattle. That's how much they turn over their stock. That sooner or later I will see it if I just pay attention. And the other day, I think it might have been yesterday, yesterday or the day before, whenever I did my Arthurian starter kit, I did an Arthurian starter kit about the legends of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. And the oddest suggestion that I made in that starter kit was Hal Foster's Prince Valiant, which is Arthurian, but it doesn't star. It stars Prince Val. It doesn't star Arthur and Lancelot or Merlin or whatnot. They make appearances, but they're not. It's Arthurian scent, and it's set in a very Maxfield Parrish fantasized version of the Age of Arthur. so it was a little bit of a stretch to put it on that list, but I wanted to do it just because for the mind frame of an entire generation of Americans, it was Arthurian. It was the main thing that was Arthurian. I have known people eons past, decades and decades and decades and decades ago, deep in the bowels of the 20th century. I knew all kinds of people, from grade school children to college professors to crusty old retirees, who were all eagerly waiting for the next Prince Valiant in the Sunday comics. It had that kind of universal appeal. And during that starter kit, I mentioned that I don't have any Prince Valiant. And I found some Prince Valiant at the Brattle. And I want to show you what I found. One was the find of the day, and the other was not. I'm intrigued by it, because Prince Valiant continued. In fact, for all I know, it still continues as a newspaper comic. If newspaper comics even run anymore, most newspapers have found out that they cannot afford a full color spread of comics every Sunday, and so they don't run them anymore. But Prince Valiant continued long after Hal Foster left, and other artists took up the reins, and I have always sort of reflexively poo-pooed that because they aren't Hal Foster, and that's not fair, obviously, right? Since I have seen lots and lots of subsequent artists on properties that I like do a great job, even if it's a different job from the original artist, from the legendary artist. Just the other day, I was talking about Joe Kubert doing the artwork for Tarzan. Where would I be I would have robbed myself of the enjoyment of that run if I'd said that Bernie Hogarth was the only person who can draw Tarzan. I would have missed a whole bunch of great Tarzan artists. And the same thing is true with Prince Valiant. So when I saw this volume there, I found a collection of one big adventure that isn't by Hal Foster. And I wanted to show you too. The artwork here is by Gary Gianni. And Gary Gianni is a really, really good fantasy and science fiction artist. I don't know how many of you know the publication Spectrum. Every year, Spectrum, I think, is up to number 30, something like that. It's an oversized, full-color gathering, an overview of fantasy and science fiction artwork across a wide array of mediums. Spectrum, whatever the number is. Every year there's a new one with a number. And Gary Gianni is in those all the time. He's and I always like what I see of him. He's the artist here. This is Hal Foster's Prince Valiant in an an adventure called Far from Camelot. See, and it's that adventure would have taken place over the course of many Sundays, and here it is collected. And those of you who, I don't think there are any of you who know your Prince Valiant, but if there's anybody out there that knows the Hal Foster Prince Valiant, you'll be able to tell in 5 seconds that that's not him. Even though you can see clearly that whoever is doing this is trying to homage his artwork, if not slavishly imitate it. They are trying to summon it in a way, right? Garigiani was probably told to summon it in a way. I think it's obvious that it's not him, but it's also not bad. And I've never tried this. I've always been closed-minded towards this. So fantastic. I grabbed it. But that wasn't the only Prince Valiant thing. The other Prince Valiant thing I got was the find of the day. Something that I am overjoyed that I discovered. And I don't know. You never know. The Brattle will provide. It is just an ineffable mystery of life. This is the definitive Prince Valiant companion. Introduction by Ray Bradbury. The foreword is by Brian Walker, and the whole thing is compiled by Brian Kane. And this is tons and tons of text, maps that were done by Hal Foster about Prince Val's world, all sorts of spot art with letters and period photographs. Look at that. This is just incredible. There's Prince Val sucking on a sword hilt. This will probably have, I probably won't, oh, look at that. Wow. Oh my God, I gotta show you this. Look at that giant crab crawling over the side of the ship. Incredible. Now it'd be a little bit difficult for me to go and find it, but this probably has all sorts of ephemera, because Hal Foster used to put Prince Val on Christmas cards that he sent to friends, anniversary cards. I don't know that I'll be able to find one of those in here, but this will almost certainly have them. Oh, and this has artwork. There's Gustave Doré. This has artwork that affected Foster. Great. I knew about this thing, but I never thought I'd find it. And now I have the definitive Prince Valiant companion, as close as I'm going to get to the kind of volume that I described during that Arthurian starter kit. I described a Prince Val volume that would be big, it would be hardcover, it would have lots and lots of reprints, and lots of text. This is as close as I think I'm ever going to get. That is great. Fantastic. This also has a summary of all of his adventures when he was done by Hal Foster. So not any of these later adventures about which I know nothing. But I'm going to learn. Fantastic. So that was my fully subsidized Friday Brattle visit. It's going to rain tomorrow, so I'm glad that I went today. But we have 2 volumes of Prince Valiant. One by a modern artist who I dismissed. Now I get a chance to try it again. Maybe they're good. And the Prince Valiant Companion. Fantastic. That's a keeper. That goes in the little book soon. Then we have a collection of Peter Arno and a collection of Helen Hokinson. 2 New Yorker artists in volumes all by themselves. Then we have The Allies Strike Back, James Holland. The Birth of the Messiah by Raymond Brown. And Robert Kennedy and His Times by Arthur Schlesinger, which needs a little tender loving care. So a nice either or Brattle trip there, where some are really fat and others are really thin. And that is it. That is your Brattle visit for today. I don't know how many Brattle visits that makes this week. But I'm not going again until next week. So the rest of you have that long to cough up some credit. And I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.